Okay everyone, so in this next video, let's try to go and implement a new tile set. I actually drew a new tile set that I want to implement into this project. And I've also added another one like this one. You can see here we do have another tile set that I drew using GIMP for me to go and work on this project and replace those tile sets. And I've already made some changes that I have done on the platform, so I'm just going to go and copy paste that already just to save some time. And I'm just going to go and delete all of this and replace that with ground tile set 2. And I'm going to drag those tile sets that I created, and that's just basically a box for the ground. Of course, we will need to utilize this ground tile set 2, this ground tile set that I did some testing for the values. As you can see, from 700 going down to 16, we have 700 going down to 10 for the ground tile set 2. And if I try to go to our game.js file here, we just need to change also some values here. So I will be changing this to the name of the ground tile set, and that will also be, instead of platform.png, which is just a placeholder tile set that I used for testing, tile set. And let's have a ground tile set 2. Of course, you can try to shorten the names of this, but for now I just want to test how that will look. So we now have those values, and I think we missed here ground tile set 2. Let me just go back to the browser and test. And now we can see that there's that tile set up in our browser, and we can jump and we can collect some wheels. Let's try to reposition our spikes here also. So let's go back to our code base and let's try to work on looking for the spike that we have here. And what I want to do here is to just copy paste some of this. Then we just want to replace some values. I'm just going to copy paste this 4 times. Then let's just change some values here. And it's going to change this to 575, 575, 575. Now let's try to save that. Let's go back to our browser and let's see where our spikes will now be positioned. So we do have that spike. Let's try to go change the X values. Now let's try to refresh. So we now have some traps that we can try to jump on. Let's also try to reposition our player around this area. Now let's try to go and set up some timer. So let's first declare another const here. And I'm going to call this start time. And I'm going to give it a, let's first give it a 10-minute value. So we want to redeclare this value or multiply this by 60. So let's have a timer. Let time assign the value of start time multiplied by 60. We also want to set up a timer text. So let's try to go and implement that. Let's scroll down here and we can try to use this score text as a reference. Let's just go get that. Let's call this timer text. And I'm going to give this a value of 100. Then instead of score, I would want to use the word timer. And let's just first set this at 10:00. Let's try to see how that will look on the browser. So we do have a timer set up on our text. Now let's try to work on creating a function that will try to update that. Let's go down here. I'm going to create a function update timer. And then let's have a const minutes. We're going to assign the floor, mat.floor. We're going to have a variable called 60 or time. And then we divide that by 60. Let seconds assign the value or initialize that with the variable time. And we have a modulus of 60. Then we can also try to set up timer text dot set text. Let's say timer. Then we can try to set up, let's say we want to have a let's just first say seconds. Let's use a ternary operator for that. Let's set up the seconds, assign the value of seconds less than 10. So I think we want to have a 0 plus seconds. And we also want to decrement that variable time. And in here, take note, this is the time variable that we declared on top, that will have a start time of 10 minutes multiplied by 60. And so far right now, we're checking the minutes and we are using the seconds to assign and initialize that with the value of time, because we will be redeclaring it with a ternary operator. We're checking if it's less than 10. We're checking a condition, and then we're passing in this true value of 0 plus seconds and another value, which is going to be the value of the variable seconds that has been initialized. So whichever is, this is going to be true and this is going to be false. And this one is just basically converting the value that we have here so that there will be no decimal points. And if we try to go and call this with the use of the set interval method, update timer, and let's try to pass in a millisecond of 1000 first for testing. And let's try to see how that will work. And now we do have that value there of seconds, but I think we have to set, I think I made a mistake here. So let's first try to have this here, and then let's remove this. And we want to concatenate, and let's try to use the backtick for a template literal. so that we can pass in variables inside of that template literal. Now let's try to go back to the browser and test out. So we now have that timer appearing on our screen. Okay, so I think we can try to further implement some more things here. I was actually exploring on how we can try to make this work. If we want to set up the minutes here, we can actually also do that. As you can see, we can try to reference the variable minutes inside of this template literal. And if we go back to the browser, this should be working. So you can see we now have the 10, 9, then the values. And I would want to change the lato. Let's just to see how that will look. I think that's much better. The timer looks better that way. Of course, I think the time of 10 minutes is a bit too long. So I did some exploration ahead of time. And what I did is that I changed the value of 10 minutes up here to 1 minute. Then I had removed this. And if it's less than 1, let's see how that will look on our browser. So now we have that value of, again, refresh. And I think we need to change the text up here to 1 minute. Let's go back here, set to refresh. And now we have the first set of 0 values. And we now have the timer that will be running as we try to refresh our browser or as we try to start our game. Now, if we do some playtest here, of course, the thing that I was thinking about was when we get to collect the wheels, there will be some sort of a time limit for us to be able to collect the wheels. And I also thought of how when we get to collect all of the wheels, we will be able to win the game. So at least we can finalize this basic tutorial that we have here, and at least we get to have a win message and a lose message. So that's one of the things that I was thinking about on how we can try to implement that in this project. And by the way, I actually utilized this tutorial for exploring Phaser, and I would really recommend that you try to read through the documentation and review JavaScript basics, fundamentals, because it's really going to be helping you out a lot. I know that some concepts here is quite really confusing, like the this keyword. We know that the this keyword can be really confusing. I know that because when I was starting out, and this really confused me a lot. And if you try to look at how we can try to check out what that this keyword contains, we can actually console.log that, then go back to our browser, refresh, and then try to go in spec and check the console. You do see an object, and then this is giving us a bit of an idea on what that this keyword is all about. It's containing an object, or it's referring to an object. And depending on how this keyword is used, if it's going to be an object method, we know that we do have methods in an object, right? So we know that if, for example, let's say here in this example, we have what we call methods in an object, and we also have functions. And depending on how this keyword is used, most probably you'll have to adjust your approach on how to deal with this keyword. So a very basic idea is that methods in an object, like for example, if we have a const here, then we have an object, then we create some sort of an object, then we have a key, then a value. Sometimes that key value pair will contain, let's say, a function, then function like this, right? So most probably, it's really important that you go through the fundamentals of JavaScript and functions. This will normally be referring to the global window in the browser. So usually functions will be based on global scope. So scoping. It's also important that you review the scoping concepts in JavaScript if you're going to be working with Phaser, just to explore further on how you can try to look into the different ways on how to explore the code base of the framework. And I think this is one essential thing to try to figure out. I'm still also exploring the different methods that we can try to utilize and how we can try to organize the code base that we have with the use of Phaser. So if you want to go and explore further how I tried to look into the project, you might want to check out the tutorial that I read from the documentation. And you would see that I also based most of the assets that I created here based on the tutorial that is provided to us by the Phaser documentation. So you can try to utilize the same assets that are here, because most of the assets I only change and I just customize most of my asset. I created my own assets for this game, but if you want to follow along, you can actually utilize the resources that are here also in the documentation that has been provided by Phaser. So you would see this is the reference of what I tried to look into, and I just implemented this feature from where we're adding a timer right now into the project. Now going back to the final parts of this project that I want to implement. So another feature that I wanted to add to the project is for us to be able to go and have some win text. So if we try to look at the collect wheel, we do have a score text, and we know that we do have a specific value that we get to have once we try to collect all of the wheels that we've generated based on the group dynamic group that we have here, right? So we have repeat 10 here, and that generates at least 11 wheels. Now I would want to, usually this is how I explore some things. I like to add some features into the project, and just to, and I usually customize projects assets. I create my own project assets just so that I will be able to further explore. If for example I'm following a tutorial, I would want to explore further on how to implement that if I want to try to build my own game. And I actually learned that from the tip of Chris De Leon from Home Team Game Dev, starting from scratch just to practice certain skills like artwork and other things. I really like that advice from where you try to work from scratch most of the time. I also try to code from scratch. I like tutorials that I watch them starting from scratch so that I can try to follow along and try to see and figure out what are the custom functions that are not part of the language and the built-in methods that are part of the language that has been developed by the developers already. So for a pseudocode here, I would want to have some sort of a way to check cortex and then display you win text, right? So we know that we can try to test out checking out a condition. So if score is equals to 110, we know that there we have 11 wheels, and usually if we want to finish the game, we will be getting that 110 score. So we can say that score text, and we want to go access that set text method, and then we can say you win. Then we can try to reuse some of the things that we already used here, like the window location dot reload. So now if we try to play the game, And let's see if that worked. So we do have the wheels, and I think we are encountering some issues here, but let's first try to see. We do get that 10 value, and I think that's happening because we have our, let's see, we want this to also be in the if condition. So if we try to go back to the browser now, let's try to test. So that works. We now have the win message once we get to collect all of the wheels. Now let's try to go and try to reload or make the player lose and have a lose message once we have the timer run out. So if we try to write that down, player should lose once the timer runs out, and display you lose. So I'm just going to reduce this to 350 first. The update timer milliseconds that we have here, because I've done some testing already. I'm going to change this to value of 2, and I want to remove this 0 here. I'm just going to have that seconds. Then we want to have some sort of a condition that we will try to check. If time is equals to 0, then timer text dot set text equivalent to you lose. And then we can try to have that window location also in that condition. Let's try to see what that will be doing on the browser now. So as you can see, guys, we do have a win message and a lose message. So if I get to, let's just do some playtest. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. I'm hoping that you learned in the tutorial series that I've made in Pacer. I'm still learning the platform or the framework. I'm hoping that through the tutorial series that I've made, you got some ideas on how you can try to play around with further on how to use the framework. So that's it for this video series, and of course we can add some more features for this game. Just let me know, leave it down on the comment if you have some suggestions that we can try to incorporate into the project. And thank you again for watching, and I would like to request some support by hitting the like button and the subscribe button in the channel so that I can further continue on creating some similar content as to what I've done here in this video series. So thank you everyone, and see you again on the next videos that I'll be making in my channel.